What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? Everybody can hear me all right and everything, right? Let me know. Good to see you guys. I've got this really weird thing up on here that probably makes you feel like I'm a strange person, and it may gross some of you out. Yeah. Okay, heard. Okay, thank you, Anya. Looks cool. Yeah, so I want to talk about translucent we've been doing a lot of textures, right? So we've been doing a lot of different textures, and I kind of wanted to like put some teeth to that study, sort of, to just show you kind of like this is just like a fun little sketch that I did sometime. I wasn't actually even expecting to be able to use it or anything, but but I was just doing it for fun. But I wanted to show you like kind of the idea, of what I was doing here and how to utilize all these different textures, right? So we're going to be talking about translucent materials today. And so like this one is going to be primarily like the translucent one, like, more than anything. Like this one is going to be the one that we're using the most. This one was actually from like a frigate bird. This was the throat of a frigate bird. The frigate bird like puffs up his throat and stuff like that and sticks it out. And so that's what this study was from. This one, and that's sort of like for like the kind of bag looking section that's there. Um, and then this one, of course, is for like the different spots and the different parts of the animal. This was actually for some of the little touches on there and things like that, just like a little bit of that on there. And then this is going to be for the translucent areas. So, and let me just actually, Andy, let me just get rid of that for a second because I just want to point out some things real quick. But if you look here, like I want you to see like there's translucency on these. I'll bring that right back up, Andy, as soon as this is off. I just want to show some stuff. Um, there's translucent areas here, and then there's translucent areas in. Oh no, that's good. No, I love it. Yeah, no, it's totally fine. I say go for it. Yeah. Well, that's the cool thing. Like you're diving right in. We're going to be talking about it today too, which is great. Yeah, dive right back in. As soon as I'm done showing this, I love that. Yeah, you gotta that. I like actually that that's your first instinct is to just do it. That's awesome actually. But this has translucency, and so do these, right? Now, skin does as well, right? Skin does as well. Like we're going to talk a little bit about skin later and things like that, but I just want to show you like it doesn't just relate to these like gross pustules or whatever. It relates to the skin. It relates to maybe like the eyelids, the eye, even a little bit, the tongue, like a little bit of this nose, and then but all of that's going to be something that you can utilize it in all those different areas. We're going to talk about that. So I want to kind of give a quick. Let me bring that back up for you, Andy. Let me assign this to you again. There we go. Um, and I gave that to you. Yes. Okay. Good. So I want to just talk about the way that all of this works first, because it takes a little bit of explanation, I think, first, to kind of get a handle on it. Let's. So when you're thinking about painting anything, when you're thinking about painting here, I'm going to grab my layer real quick. Anything you want to think about light, right? So we've got like, let's just say we've got a sphere. We're doing a sphere, right? Let's just do like a normal sphere here. We'll paint this just like a very matte sphere. Let's just do this. After doing so many textures, I've done this like 8 billion times, just done like a real a real quick sphere, you know. Let me make sure that this is got my density on. And I have the selection here. I'm gonna actually take off the selection and lock the opacity here. Just a quick like I'm trying to get a little bit of a bend in the light there too, because I know it's going to be usually light on a curved surface like that it's going to be a little bit of an ellipse, like where that is. But this is going to be the core shadow here, a little bit darker in there. It's going to be a little bit lighter. Let's say the environment. Let's say like the background is in there, like that. And I'll come over here, go a little bit lighter. We're going to keep this real simple, real straightforward. Nothing, nothing complex. Yeah, Terminator too. Yeah, Terminator, core shadow, whatever you want to call it. Whatever you want to call that is totally fine. Not a problem. but the transitions between each of these areas is what's really going to give that effect of the roundness, right? So if we've got light coming in and light is hitting right here, right? We've got light coming down and hitting here. We may have even like a highlight on here, right? So you may even get like a highlight on there, whatever. That looks a little more glossy than maybe it should be. So I'll go lower opacity there. But 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 yeah, so light's going to be coming down like this, hitting this surface, bouncing off. And we're also going to get light that's coming down, bouncing and hitting up under here. You have this reflected light and things like that. Now with translucency, translucency means you're going to have still a surface, right? So it's not transparent, right? Transparent would be, totally see through like glass, right? So totally see through like glass and all that. Translucent means that you're going to have this passing through this. It's going to be hitting the surface as well, but it's going to be passing through, and then you're going to have the light bouncing all around in there. And I want to, before we get rolling and really start painting like hardcore on this, I want to show you. I'm just going to grab a photo. I'm going to grab a sunset photo because I want to explain it this way, so that you understand kind of what's happening. Here, let's do this, right? So let's grab a sunset like this. This is good. I think this is a good one. Let's see if I can copy and paste this in. Sometimes it takes multiple attempts to paste it. Yep, let me do it again. Sorry. Go in here eventually. Let's do it. Oh, try number 3. Maybe I'll get a smaller image and it'll work. Let's try it. But nope. Okay, hold on. Let me grab a smaller image maybe and try that. Here we go, like this kind of a thing. Even though this has been doctored a bit, oh, this is smaller. This should work. Yeah. Okay, so even though this has been doctored a bit, like you can see, these are the colors that we associate with a sunset, right? Like in general, maybe not the purple so much, but we definitely see red. We definitely see, orange and stuff like that. Like, why is that happening? Right? Why is all this happening? Why? Because sunlight actually would look like this. If we were seeing the full spectrum, it would look like this, right? It would just look white, right? Yeah, what's up, Meg? Is Meg here? Good to see you, Meg. Oh, I need to bring up, let me just make sure I have my have the comments in the chat up here too. And if you guys have questions about anything when I'm going through this, feel free to ask questions and stuff like that. I don't mind that at all. So definitely ask. But the light is white, right? So the light it would be white. Why is it that we see red when we are, when the sun is going down, right? What's the reason for that? And the reason for that is basically if you think about the earth like this and the sun, like if you're like, let's say you're sitting here and you've got the atmosphere or whatever, and you have the sun going through. Why is it blue like when the sun's high in the sky, and why is it red when it's going down? Basically, what's happening, long story short, because there's a big long, technical explanation for all this. I'm sure that a scientist would tell me I'm saying it wrong or something. But the idea is there's different wavelengths. Like light is made up of all the different wavelengths of color and things like that, right? So these wavelengths, from this angle, cooler wavelengths like blues, greens, that kind of a thing get bounced away, right? And the only thing that's left, and sorry, I'm getting you guys might not see an update. I'm going to wait for that to wait for the server to respond. Let me refresh real quick. Actually, let me undo this and I'll refresh. Refresh real quick. Can I do that? Well, I'll keep talking while you guys are here. You might not be seeing an update either, but the idea is like those particular wavelengths are getting bounced out, and all that we're left with is going to be the red ones, right? So those red ones are the longer wavelengths, and so they penetrate more, right? And the way to think about that, the way to think about like that concept is the same. Okay, good. Maybe can I undo this? Nope, I didn't think I'd be able to. Not after that, but that's okay. All right, so yeah, so these get bounced off like this, right? And from up here, it's going to be light's not going to have to go through as much atmosphere. And we're going to talk about this principle too, in as it relates to translucent objects as well. But the light is going to make it through here. Those blues are going to make it through. The purples, that kind of thing is going to make it through. Here, it's going to get bounced off, right? It's going to get bounced off. And so think about it like this. This is the way that I always like to explain it to to students because we're going to talk about this later too. But there's subsurface scattering kind of works the same way too. Like when you are sitting in your house and you're trying to sleep, and there's someone like a couple doors down, they're playing their music and they're playing it super loud, like crazy loud or whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm trying to sleep. And what do you hear, right? If you can put your head, you put pillow over your head and like, be silently, cursing them or whatever when you're trying to sleep. But it's like you hear bass, right? You hear like that's like what you hear. So the reason for that is because bass is the same as like red light, right? In a sunset, right? It penetrates more. So bass is actually like if you're a sound engineer, bass is one of those things that's really hard to deal with because it bounces everywhere, but it also penetrates everything. But it's like a really long wave, right? Super high end, like cymbal stuff. It's really easy to kind of like if you put like a blanket over your head and you listen to cymbals, like it cuts that a lot, right? If you blasted bass and you put a blanket over your head, it doesn't do much, right? It penetrates that. So light works the same way as well. And of course, you can have two different waves cancel each other out, different things like that, of course. But light works that way as well. So when we talk about translucency and we have stuff cutting through, it's really interesting because if let me bring my image back up. If we bring that image back up and we look, like you can see that, one of the things that's really fascinating and interesting about this is that, let me go here. Let me do a new layer here is that if you have the light side, if you have this light hitting right here, right? I'm gonna zoom in a bit. Light's hitting right here on this, right? This is sort of like maybe like an alien kind of like a frog egg almost, or that kind of a thing. That sort of a thing, right? You're gonna have light bouncing off right here on the surface, but then you're also going to have light penetrating and bouncing around as well. And then you're going to have it exiting on the other side. Now, what happens with a round object like this a lot of times is that this kind of an object is actually it's going to cause what's called refraction, which is what's happening here too, which is almost like a lens, right? You ever burn an ant when you were a kid with a magnifying glass? You have a magnifying glass and the light comes in and the light is coming in like this and then it gets focused to a point, right? That's what's basically happening with this refraction right here. And so when you have that light, you never burned an ant. I did that as a kid. Maybe I'm just the sadistic one. I felt bad after I did it. If that makes you guys feel better about me. um, yeah. But what happened? And maybe that's like an old school thing. Maybe no one does that. No one goes outside anymore. They all sit inside eating Cheetos and playing Fortnite. So I guess that's you know. but this gets focused, right? But what happens is sorry, the light's passing through. You tore the wings off flies. Nice. Yeah. And it hits this other side too, right? So you have this light bouncing through and coming through. It hits the other side. And oftentimes on a translucent object, you will see this. You will see this side will be catching some of that light, and then you'll see refraction even within the cast shadow. So this object, so what's really interesting about this is if you want to make something like let's go back to the simple sphere that I have here, right? If you want to make something translucent, it's really weird because you actually um have to almost think opposite most of the time. So let me grab this again. I'll go in this I'll flip this, right? Because more often than not, if you have a translucent object, you're going to get this sort of thing happening where the dark is actually facing the light source like this, and this dark will still be receiving light, and I'll explain that in a second, but it's going to be facing the light source like this. And then you'll have light really penetrating and going through to this other side where it's lighter, but you'll still get the surface getting hit, right? So the surface will still be getting hit on this side. So if it's a glossy sort of an image, you'll still get this kind of a thing happening on that side, right? And a lot of times, if it's a glossier image, you will get a whole. I'm going to do another layer here like this, and I'll put this over top, and I'm just going to drop the opacity down. I'll show you what I mean here by doing this. Like I'll just drop the opacity down. You're going to get like a layer on that side. Go like I'm going to soften this just a bit, but you'll get that kind of a thing happening, but then it'll be hitting on this back end as well as it's coming out like this. So if you get something that's translucent, often this is what's going to happen. So a lot of times, like if people are doing, you'll see this concept, um, I see this concept like in a lot of we're gonna do this later too, but a lot of like D&D illustrations or something like that. Anything where there's like gems in a sword, handle or like something like that, like you'll often see that. Um let me go to another layer here and let me show you. You'll see this. This is what you'll see. Right? Like a gemstone that's like this and maybe it's darker facing like a garnet one, which we're going to do. I'm going to show you garnet later. This, and then you'll see it become much more saturated on this side, like this, where the light is exiting, and then you'll get a highlight on this side over here, boink, like that. And that's like sort of like a gemstone, right? That you'll see, and it's very like in fantasy art, like you'll definitely see these kinds of things. Like it comes up quite a bit, right? So that's the idea, right? The idea is that light is passing through. Now, when you have color and you're thinking about this, this is the interesting part to think about. In the same way that with that sunset, like I was telling you, that light, like cooler light gets bounced around and things like that, more often than not every time, it depends on the circumstances, but more often than not, you will see as light passes through here, those other wavelengths are easier to they will bounce easier. So you're going to actually have a warming effect, a saturation that's happening here, and a warming effect. So I like to go like super saturated. Like when I'm doing like translucent stuff, the inside section is like super uh saturated. Like I go all the way over. I go all the way over because it's gonna end up getting more saturated and actually a little bit more warm. I actually will lean a little bit more warm. So like for this, I'd probably go a bit more towards the orange. And then as I went back towards the area that is facing the light, I would actually go a little bit more cool as well and kind of pull that back like this, like almost do like this. Now, one of the other things that's going to happen if something is very translucent, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's put something behind this, right? So let's do this in layers as well. Actually, let me get rid of this and then we can start painting this together. Actually, let's do it like this. Let's paint this together. And Andy, you can stay right there. That's fine. You can stay right there. That's fine. I'm going to come down here. So if I come here and I paint, let's just make a just something like white behind here like this. Here, hold on. Put something. Here we go. Let me go 100%. Why is it not letting? Oh, that's the wrong layer. Sorry. I'm getting layer fatigue. Sorry. Okay, so I'm just gonna put something white behind here, like not 100% white, but just something more like this, just like a design back here or something. Because I want to show you, like, if you come over top of that, if you go with a layer over top of that, what I'm gonna actually do is actually make. Let's use that same sort of. I'll do a pink one this time. That'll be similar to my my little frog egg or alien frog egg thing or whatever, right? So I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna paint over top of this, and you guys can do this too. I'm gonna create sort of like a matte version of this. Sometimes it depends on the object. Sometimes you will get, even with translucent objects, like you'll get a pretty clear like core shadow. You'll get that kind of a transition. Sometimes you'll get a little bit like that, but then the other reflected light in the scene and the light that's passing through will sort of negate that, right? But you can start that way if you want. If you want to start that way with a very, very clear like core shadow and kind of walk this up, you can definitely do that. That's definitely something you can do. But just know that like when you start dropping the like so this opacity can get dropped to like this, and it's a little bit more transparent. You're gonna have light now hitting. Like if I did another layer, like light's gonna be hitting here, and kind of be negating that side a little bit, But we can start that way. We can start like this, and then let's drop the opacity just a little bit of this. Now, one of the things that's that's happening here too, that's really important, is I'm going to click out of this. I want to show you another thing that's important to think about with the light is that if you've got a sphere like this, right? and you've got a surface, like the surface is letting the light through. Let's say that, um, let's just say that this is the surface, right? So this is the surface material, and it's got an edge, obviously, so light's going to bounce off that. As light goes to go through here, again, as it goes through, it's going to get through this area pretty easy, right? But just like the sun, when it's setting, if it has to go through too much of that, then it's going to be reflected like quite a bit, right? It's going to be bounced around. It's going to be reflected quite a bit. So oftentimes, what you will see on a translucent object is that around the rim where the light has to go through much more of it, it'll be a little bit darker. And there's this, there's a bunch of different effects to consider, but this is one of them to think about. And again, I want to go through this. I want to give you guys, I don't want to be super technical, but I just want to set you up before we start really diving in and painting like too much. But this basically what it boils down to is like this outer edge is usually a little bit darker on translucent objects. You'll see this sometimes on like gummy bears, or you'll see it on different things. You'll have a little bit of a dark edge here. So we have the layer that we just created, which is this transparent layer, which sort of has the same, like a normal transition of light. I'm gonna go back to the selection. I'm gonna create a new layer, and then I'm just gonna do this. I'm going to grab a soft brush, and I'm gonna actually darken this down and just do this. I'm going to make it like pretty dark in there like that. Then I'm going to go to the eraser, grab that soft brush for the eraser, and I'm just going to erase it out so that it's like just going to be sort of along the edge of this. I want to use like a lower opacity too, so I can control it. But this is very often what you're going to find that happens. This, and again, like you can make it pretty strong. Do this on a separate layer. Do this on a separate layer so that you can control all this. And then I'll make this a little bit darker here like that. Again, that's like the part of the atmosphere that the light has to go through a lot. Same thing as the sun setting. Same principle, at least. Like this. And then I'm going to make another layer on top of that, right? This is where I'm going to actually have a little bit of that darkening effect that's happening, because the light is passing through up here. So I'm going to go, pretty dark on this side like this right here. Well, actually, let's leave that off. Let's do this first. Let me do this first, because you can see like a fairly translucent, like let's just pretend this is really translucent. So I'm going to go pretty soft. I'm just going to go actually make a lighter layer up here. A lighter layer up here. Let's make it a little bit more hard edge too. Let's grab this one. I'm going to go to like 20% opacity, and I'm going to drop in like this lighter area here. I am going to erase into this to make it a little bit more gradual, like that. And then I'm going to add a highlight on top of this. Let me show you. So this will be here. I'll go with a more opaque brush and add a highlight here. This would be that surface getting hit, right? This surface would be getting hit. A lot of times right around the highlight, you're going to have a little bit of a, let's go 10% opacity. I'm going to go around this a little bit. It's going to have a little bit of a bloom around that somewhat. And then I'll drop the opacity of this layer. I'm going to drop the opacity of that layer a little bit, and then I'm going to make a new layer and come back and restate that highlight on here, so I can like have different levels of that, right? So you can kind of see that happening there. I want to actually erase a little bit of this. Is a lot of times with these areas that are like like the room is reflecting, a lot of times it will have a little bit of a harder edge than you think. So I'm going to come back in and get rid of that softness around the edge of this so that it's a little more, sometimes it'll be gradual, but it depends what it's reflecting, right? And let's say that this environment is hitting this gray that we're using for the background is hitting this as well. Now I just want to show you what layer I'm adjusting. I'm adjusting this layer, right? So let me get rid of the other ones so I'm not being confusing. Here, let's get rid of this. This is the initial color layer that I've adjusted the opacity for. This is like the lighter layer. Now, or the darker layer. Now I'm going back for this lighter layer, which is over top of that, right? So this like very thin, lighter layer. So here, I'll show you right there, that lighter layer. Look, watch. Boink, boink. That layer there. And so what I'm going to do is actually take the environment and inject a little bit of the environment into this, right? Now there's something called the Fresnel effect. It's written like this. Really weird if you guys haven't heard of it, but the Fresnel effect is what I'm talking about here. And what that basically means, it's like I said, I don't want to get too technical. I can explain it later if somebody has a question about it, but basically means like whatever the angle of it, like the angle, the more oblique the angle, the more to your eye from where the light's bouncing off and hitting your eye, the more oblique the angle, and by oblique I mean this, like this is oblique, this is an acute angle. So if my eye is here and it's like bouncing like this, that's going to have less of a reflection. If the light is bouncing like this, it's going to have more of a reflection. So if I have a sphere like this, the light that's bouncing this way is going to be more reflected. The light that's bouncing like this is going to be have less of a reflection. So that's the Fresnel effect, basically. So take a look. So now what we're going to do is I can even do this on another layer too. That's fine. Use as many layers as you need. And then I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab the environment value, like this environment that's here. And I'm going to go with a soft brush. And I'm going to drop this in, particularly, I'm at 20% opacity. I'm going to drop it in particularly on the sides of this object, right? On the top, on the bottom. So there's that darkening that happens, but now we're adding this, right? Now we're adding this to that as well. So then let me get rid of my thing. And you can start to see that that looks like it's a part of this environment now a lot more. And again, you can do it over the whole thing. Another way to do it is to put it over the whole thing like this. And the Fresnel effect. That's hilarious. Oh my gosh. There's a joke there. There's an art joke there for sure. The Fresnel effects. What? That's really funny. That's awesome. But you can also erase it from the center like this to get it showing up on the sides. Oh, that's really funny. You can do it that way too. I can't get over that. That's hilarious. That's really funny. Oh man. I like to come in and actually paint it on the sides like that. Oh man. I kind of want to make that. Like that's funny, Andy. She knows what she knows how to paint. She wears the Fresnel effect or whatever. The smell of a fresh painting. Or like some like commercial about how she's wearing light, or something. That's really funny. So yeah, you don't want to put it here, right? If you put it here, like it doesn't resonate, like it looks weird, right? If I put it there, like it doesn't quite resonate. It looks a little bit weird. It happens. We register all this happening, but we just don't. We don't we don't know why all the time, right? We don't know why that's always happening, but then okay, so we've got that layer, right? So now we're really starting to get things to look. It's looking much more translucent, right? It looks like maybe like stained glass or something like that, or something's coming through. You also will see a distortion effect too, in the same way that so here, let me show you this way. Like a funhouse mirror basically looks like this. A funhouse mirror looks like this, and you're standing in front of it, looking at it like that. Basically, what's happening is this light is taking longer to get. It's further away. This light is closer. You're reflected in there, but that's why it looks like your head is like this wide, and then your body gets like this small, and then your arm gets like this, and then your legs are like right here. Because basically, the light is coming back to you. You're standing dead in front of it, but the light is coming back to you in weird ways, right? Very very strange. Like and so that's what's odd about that funhouse mirror. And the same thing can happen on this too. So if I think I can I distort this? I don't know if I can distort it quite. I'm going to erase this. Actually, yeah, I'll erase this. I'm going to erase those white stripes and just show you, like, you would get some distortion on this. So a lot of times, like with a sphere like this, you might get a distortion that just kind of looks like this. Like it might kind of like bend around like that, and sort of like this gets really complex. Like you can have all sorts of crazy distortions in there, but just know, like, it depends on the material that's inside that. It depends on, exactly how it's like what angle it's going through the glass and stuff like that. But you're probably going to get something a little more like that if it's like a thicker areas on there. Let's say there was like a really thick area that was going around this. It would get like even more distorted in like that area. Or oftentimes, like you'll see this in people's glasses. If you're painting people's glasses, you can get that like offsetting effect, right? So like it gets offset. Like so you could even have here, let me erase these areas here. Like when you're looking through their lenses, you'll get like an offset. So let's go 100% here. Like, yeah, you'll get like these same things showing up, but they'll be like moved over here like this here. Let me move it over really far so you can kind of see what I mean. Like it would be like that kind of an effect happening, right? Where like that's coming through, but it's showing up that way, right? So you can get some distortion happening there. Now, this probably wouldn't have a ton of distortion, not a ton. So you'd have a little bit maybe, but nothing crazy. Maybe something more like this or something. But that will definitely be be an effect that happens. So then let's go back to so now we got this translucent object. We got this like stained glass kind of looking thing. Let's go back to or let me do one more layer and let me come in and just show some of the light hitting on this side, which would definitely happen. It would get a little warmer and it would get a lot more saturated here. And I want to go, actually, I'm going to go to this layer right here. And I'll come in like this. This side would maybe have the light exiting a bit more. Let's go really saturated with this. I'm going to go to like 10% opacity. And I don't have my selection anymore, so I'm just going to paint over this. But you'd have that light hitting there a bit more. Like this. Pretty strong on that side. Maybe here. Over top of this. Go on another layer over top of this. Yeah, I will. I'm going to go on another layer over top of this. So I can get that to be really nice and saturated and be hitting on that side. This is the same concept too as dew, by the way. Like when you're painting dew does the same kind of thing. And I'll show you. Dew basically has, show you here, like this. Dew basically looks like this. When you're painting dew, like you've got the darker side. Like if there was dew on this back wall, I would kind of paint it like this first. And that darker side, like this little bit of a darker side would be facing towards where the light is coming from. Then what would happen is this area would be where the light is kind of catching on the other side of that. But you would have a darkening effect around the outside for the same reason, right? It's translucent, transparent, translucent, but this, the light is not gonna get not gonna make it through on those ridges. So a lot of times in dew, you'll see darker outlines like that. It's the same reasoning, same thing. And then light is going to catch on this side like this, catch on that side. And then what's really important is like maybe this gets a little darker up here. So then what's really important is there's going to be a cast shadow off this. So it's a translucent object, which is weird, right? Why do you have a cast shadow coming off a translucent object? Like that doesn't make any sense, right? But it's because some of the light is getting reflected back, hence the highlight, right? Some is getting reflected off. Not all of it, but some of it, right? So it's going to have a cast shadow there. Cast shadow is going to be pretty light, obviously, but that's going to be how you paint dew, and then you're going to have refraction happening, like I was talking about, where you're going to have refraction happening, where this is hitting. It's a little bit lighter right here, and refraction is going to be happening there a little bit more. It's going to be a little bit more concentrated there, right? Now, if you make this smaller, if you like zoom out and look at it, you're like, okay, that looks like dew. So let's put one. I'm going to put one on this. Let's put a translucent object on top of a translucent object. It's like translucent inception. We're going crazy, guys. We're going crazy. Try the same thing. Like try the same thing though. Come to an area like let's go. I'm going to go like right here. I'm just going to go a little bit darker. And just a touch darker. Not much. Not much. Just barely darker. Like this, right? And then I'll have the highlight showing up on that side for this dew. The highlight will be here. Like that. Then this will be transluception. Transluception. You know, it's crazy. And this highlight usually, usually they're very, do has like a really, it usually has a pretty strong highlight because it's such a, like a perfect curve, right? It's like really smooth surface, obviously, and really like a perfect curve. And then I'll pull from this darker shadowed area up here, and I'll get this cast shadow on here, right? So now we've got this dew on here. Now we're missing one part. One part is where that light, well, a couple parts actually, where the light comes through and catches on the other side. Light comes through and catches on that, and it's refracting and getting focused over there. So we've got this light coming through on this other side like this, which see is very important. Totally changes the whole thing when you do that, right? And this is like, I put it in pretty strongly with like 60% opacity, then I use like 10% opacity around it to get like the softer edges on it. And then I have a little bit of refraction hitting in the shadows. That's at 10% opacity. I don't want to go too strong, right? Don't want to go too strong there. And so now you've got like dew on there. Now I'm seeing that sphere through there. Now, if I wanted to put dew on the outside, like let's say I wanted to put it on the outside over here, remember all I'm going to be doing is now it's what's behind it, right? So the background is what's behind it. That's all I would see on dew like that. But again, that light can't make it through that rim and that edge. So there would definitely be, a darker line on the outside that sometimes it's a little bit broken because it looks like it's a little bit broken because the light is actually coming down and hitting this, and it's like, kind of it kind of covers up that darker rim that would be there like that. But you're going to have the same thing. You're going to have a highlight like this hitting right there, and you're going to have a lighter area underneath that like this, right? So you're going to have a lighter area. And so now you've got dew on there. You've got dew off to the side. You've got that. Like, give it a shot, you guys. Like, this is looking, listen, you guys are, yeah, nice. There you go. Yes, nice. Now, just be careful. Like, remember that it's transparent. Like, the dew is transparent. So, like, for yours on, you're like right here. Like, this part is actually kind of, you can do this, but this is kind of, hold on one second. Why am I not? Oh, I'm below you. Hold on. The part like on the bottom of your dew, like you've got like that drop, the bottom part is actually changing color a little bit. It would be, so it's actually, which it can reflect what's around it, but it would probably be more of that blue that's actually behind it, right? Like you'd see probably a little bit more of that. It probably wouldn't turn purple. It would probably be more of that blue, but you can do that though. It just looks like, dew, but if you add a color to it like that, it might look like there's a little bit, like it might look like sap coming out of it, or like an essence of some sort. Does that make sense? That kind of a thing. Like it might look like there's actually like a little bit of opaque nature to it, but it would be lighter. But it would be that, but it would almost be like this. So you have this behind there, like you have this stuff behind there, like this. So it would be a little bit more like that, like whatever's behind there. So that's if you're doing dew. Same thing too, Basil. Like this is, or Meg, I should say Meg, not Basil. Or Basal. Wait, yeah. What is it? What's your full name? Basil Meg Vinegar or something like that. Basal Meg. I can't remember. I'm looking at it. I can't see the end of your name. Wait. I can look up here. Yes, that's right. Oh, balsamic vinegar. Got it. Balsamic vinegar. That's awesome. By the way, I think I messed that up last time too. I totally got it. I totally botched it. That was bad. But I did in the end. I came through balsamic vinegar. That's so good. Okay, let me go up here because let me go to the top. I want to bring this up to the top layer. Did I set up this to move my layer? No, I've got to change that. Here, I'll just do this. I'll just drag it up like this. It's only take me a second. I think I lost it. I had a hotkey for moving the layer up, like with page up, and then I would just go page up, page up, page up to get to the top. That's something I want to tell them. Maybe we can have a button, put layer on top or something like that. Balsamic vinegar. Yes. Okay. Here we go. So look, if I grab like what's beside here, like see, this is the color and the value that you have, right? That's beside there. Like that's what you have there. Now watch. If I come up here and I do this, here and I paint over top of this, look, now it's going to look much more like dew if I paint what's actually behind there, right? It's like that version of what's behind there. Oh, nice, Anya. There. Okay, so it's already there. Beautiful. It's already there. That's what I'm saying. So that looks really good. And then the only thing that I would say to do a little bit differently, Meg, is like this would be a little bit lighter on this side, and this usually this highlight would be a little bit stronger like that, and the top of this would be just a touch darker, like a touch darker up here, like that. Like it's going to be a little bit darker on the top than on the bottom, but it will sort of be a little more see-through. That's going to read a little bit better, and you can see the difference here. Like, take a look at the difference. See that you can have, you can definitely do what you did there. It just looks more like it looks more opaque, right? It looks more like you've got salt in that water or something like that or whatever. So that's better too on you. That looks good. That looks good. All right, so let me get rid of these and these things that I have, and let's start doing some. I want to get some textures up in here that we can paint. We're gonna paint some gummies, okay? I love so now with all that in mind, we're doing something that's a little more opaque than what we just did, which is what we just did is like definitely a little more translucent, more translucent, right? I want to get rid of all these layers. I've got way too many. Let's get rid of this. Okay, perfect. So let's get the gummies up here. Ba-boom. Let me make them a little smaller. So here, I'll make them a little smaller. Or we can paint around them, I guess, but I want to make them a little smaller. This. And then you guys can come up and paint around this if you want. Like paint around this with me. But I have different versions, right? So this is more of a gumdrop, right? This is more of a gumdrop. These all are translucent objects, though, okay? These are all translucent objects. And look, why is this gummy bear blue right here? Why is that happening, right? Why is this white gummy bear, which is probably like of those there's like I think these are those fancy gummy bears. You know what I'm talking about? Like I love those. Those are my favorite. That might be like a cream soda flavor or something like that. But this is actually coming through that, right? So you're seeing what's behind that, right? What are these dark areas, right? What are these dark areas on this gummy bear? Why are there no dark areas coming through on this one? Right? Why does these areas like that? It's the same thing that we were having on there where that's what's passing through, right? So that's what's behind it. What's behind it, like this purplish one is behind this and is reflecting through there, coming through there and darkening that, right? So you still have the same principles, right? You have the light source is coming from up here. You have some of the light getting bounced off, those highlights that are there. Then you have some of that darker area that's towards the light source, and some of it's this reflecting or this bouncing in there, but it's the nature of the way the light is hitting. And see, this is facing away from us a little bit more. But then you have a saturation happening and a lightning effect on the opposite side, right? Now, these are complex forms and stuff like that. But I would say start with this if you feel uncomfortable, like start with that because this you can very, very clearly see that, okay, like if you look at like this one right here or something like that, you can very clearly see this has light bouncing off the surface. Then you have a darkening effect behind that. Then you have a lightning effect where the light is hitting on the other side and it's passing through, right? So this is really, really clear. So I'll paint something like that. I'll do that first, or even like this. I'll do this one. So I'm just going to do like a version of that, right? And then we'll do like this one, which is the same principle. It's just the surface, because it has sugar on the surface, it's bouncing a lot more light back and it's a different texture on there. So it's the same thing though. Same exact thing. So you can have translucency like this on here, but then more light is getting bounced off of those sugar crystals or whatever, sugar crystals, I guess is the way to say it. Okay. So let me go in and grab this one and I'll talk about the textural effect that you could get on this gummy thing, because it's not going to be a perfect circle like dew. It's not going to be like that, right? It's more opaque, so it's different. Like it's different than dew, so it's not just going to have these like super sharp highlights like that. It depends on the lighting too, of course. But let's go here. I'm just going to put this right here. And you guys can paint, near me if you want, or you can paint wherever. Oh, actually, I'm going to do it on a separate layer, not on the gummy layer. Okay, let's do this. Let's just make it a fun little shape like this. And then I'm going to lock the opacity there. Now I will have a darkening and sort of like a darkened and a little bit more saturated effect for like the top of this. I'm going to kind of I'm going to go based off the principles. I'm not trying to copy this gummy. I'm just going based off the principles. Based off the principles of what we learned. I don't need to copy it exact, right? But look at this gummy if you guys can see like where I'm pointing here. Look at this. See how on all of these it starts off a little bit more red, but it kind of gets orange towards the edge. It gets orange towards the edge. Like look at this one especially right there. See how it's a little bit more red and then it heads towards the orange and that yellow side. Same thing here, right? That's something that's very common again because the other wavelengths get bounced around and so that warm it like gets more saturated and more warm as it comes over. It's really interesting. Very, very fascinating. And even on the rim of this, look on the rim, the very rim of all this stuff, you can see it's like starts to get more orange. So I'm going to do the same thing on mine. I'm going to come in and make it more saturated and a little more orange on this side, like pretty highly saturated. If you need to do multiple layers, go ahead. Go ahead and do that. You can definitely do that. And you can see like the darkness around the rim of a lot of these too. You can see on some of them like there's darkness around the rim. Some of them there isn't, but a lot of them there is that darkness there. Now, I will tell you too that when you're working on this, it kind of doesn't look right until you start adding some of the highlights in there too. Like it kind of doesn't. It usually is like it's not quite working until you add the highlight. But now look, this is the room and the light source. This is going to be like probably a soft light, or something like that. And it's kind of like a pink. It's like a pinkish coolish sort of a light or like a light source, right? Like this highlight that's on here, right? It's not quite not quite white. It's not quite blue. It's sort of like in between like that, right? So I'm going to use like a low opacity version with this chalky brush. I use a low opacity version of that and kind of come in. Now this is if I'm not careful, I'm going to have to soften this because this is the same one I'll use for the gumdrops. But what I'm looking for now is, and I need to do this on a separate layer. I'm going to do this on a separate layer here. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Actually, let me go back to this. And actually, I will duplicate this. I'm going to duplicate this so I can actually just stick with the opacity, and then I'm going to do this. Erase it. And that will allow me to go right over top of it. Hold on, wait. Do this. Duplicate it. Then I'll go over top like this. Letting me. Oops. Go. Got it. Finally. Dang it. Took me forever. Okay, so you can see like I'm coming over top of this and I'm using like a lower opacity. I'm going to have to soften this. But I want to achieve that same sort of highlight that's showing up on here. And what I'll do is I'll go to like 10% opacity and I'll use my eraser. Use my eraser to kind of carve into this a little bit. Right. So I'll carve into this with that softness, like just get it to be a little bit more of like a transition on some of those spots. And then I will actually carve out like some of the shapes, right? Because like these gummies have like a very specific shape to them, don't they? They have like, let's switch back to that round brush. Like they have a very specific like topography to them, like a strawberry or like let's do like a pineapple would be funny to do on here. Let's do a pineapple on here, right? You have like this pineapple kind of shape that carves across. I'll just do this like a generic kind of pineapple-ish shape like this, like that, right? And it's a little bit like they're usually not 100% like, especially those gummies, like they don't have like a perfectly pristine shape, right? It's a little bit wonky and weird. So we'll come in like this. And some spots it comes over, some spots it doesn't. You have to kind of go back and forth. Like maybe I'll come over with this and come back over some of these spots. Here, I'll do this. Come back over some of these spots and make them a little bit more like that. But that carved out area is going to be, what defines that topography. So here, let me erase this out again like this. Actually, I'll come back in here like that. Kind of some of these spots will be a little bit more raised up than others. There's definitely a gradual sort of fall off as you get away from that light source too. Let's see. This is a little bit too. Mine may be a little bit too uh, formulaic, but that's all right. With it like this, and I'm also going to assume that like in the process of making this that certain areas will be joined together, right? So like I said, it won't be perfect, it won't be pristine. There'll be certain areas that will kind of in the processing of all of it will take it easy, Anya. See ya. Yeah, you guys are doing good. Have a good day. Good job on yours so far. You're doing good. I want to see what you were doing for this. The other one was really good. Like oh, you took off your layer. That's fine. You did really good. You did really good on that last one. Take it easy. Okay, so this it will be a gradual shift to like there will be a highlight on this. Like there'll be a central area that's a little bit lighter, just like a regular highlight, but it will uh it will kind of dissipate as it goes down towards the edges. But again, like that erased area is what's going to give it that feel. I also want to change the this is going to help sell the idea of this as well. I want to show you guys this also. Like if I come in here and I'm just going to grab the background value, I'm going to carve into this to change the silhouette of this object. So look, if I come back in and like change the silhouette, like carve out some of these little spots, it's really going to sell the idea that this has like those little raised areas on it, right? Like that helps a lot with that, doesn't it? So here, let me go back to this. Yep, and I'm going to erase some of these areas out on here. This is going to kind of come in like some of these areas are going to be more blocked out than others. It's almost like painting a mountain surface. Like that's kind of what it ends up being like because you're painting like a rock because essentially it's like what part is hitting the light and what part's not hitting the light, right? And that's essentially what you end up doing. I'm gonna go a bit darker like this and kind of come in here. This would a little bit darker, and then I'm gonna have this kind of carve out here. I want to look at that pineapple. Yeah, and that's like what I'm seeing on the pineapple is actually really interesting too on the pineapple one because there's certain spots that are getting hit with more light. So I'll show you what I mean. Like this is coming through. Like let's do like this kind of a shape or something for it. Now, the these areas like are getting hit by this. Like I'll show you what I mean. Each of these little sections are getting hit in a little bit of a different way. So I'll show you here. So this side facing this shadow side would be a little bit darker, and it would actually have highlights hitting on the edge a little bit more. So these raised sections, I'll show you, would be a little bit lighter, like right here. You'd have a little bit of a highlight, like a stronger highlight, right at the edge of this thing, right at the edge of this one. Like maybe at the edge of this one, you'd have a stronger highlight right here. Let me go 100%. Why is it not? Let me go to, let me make sure I'm at 100% opacity on that. Okay. Yeah, it should be letting me go really bright. There we go. Okay. So this is going to be lighter at the edge right there. This is going to be lighter. This will be lighter right there too. And it's pretty strong highlights on some of them, right? Some of them have like a pretty strong highlight, and then it actually fades off a little bit quicker than what I've done here. I'm zoomed in too. So as you zoom out, like the effect starts to become a lot more pronounced as well. So here, let me cover this up, adjust this. It's a little more gradual what I have. So here we'll do this, go back and establish these again. Yeah, some of those would catch a little bit more light. Would be fun to have like a strong highlight on some of them. Some of them just catching a little bit more light than others, like this. But again, it's that surface that's getting hit. This surface is what is, it's some of the light is bouncing back, right? So some of the light is bouncing back out. Some of it is passing through, which is what's giving us that translucency. And then as it passes through, this is going to get lighter. And I would actually, if I really wanted to heighten the effect, I would go to this side and make this side a little bit more saturated, a little bit brighter, like this. Have that pass through, like where that light is really strong over there. Let's let me do side. I think it would be a little bit darker over here too, like towards the edge. I don't think as much light would be coming through. Let's grab a little bit of this and kind of define this. Go back to that chalky brush. Use density on that one and kind of define some of these other areas. Right, like this. Kind of try to sell that idea that there's all these little sort of bumps on it. Now let me go in and erase out some of this. These edges are a bit more abrupt on some of these, like this, like this, like this. And then again, let me try to here, hold on. Just making slight adjustments here. Let me assume that there's like a little bit of breakup on here too. Like I think I made them a little bit too wide. I'm gonna have a little bit of breakup on the surface. And then go like this, like this. And you can start to see that coming out. But anyways, that's sort of the idea. Now think about this. Think about this as well. What if this center was really dense, right? So here, let's get rid of this. Let's like let me do like a gumdrop, right? I'll do like a gumdrop. So I'll get rid of this. I'll make it really saturated again, make it a little bit darker up here. And then let's do a gumdrop. This is going to be a little bit easier to do because this is going to be like that sugar that's on it, right? So this sugar is going to be like this, built up on this side, on this surface, and you're going to have little highlights like that, like where the light is hitting on top of there. I'm just using that chalky brush that I have. And you can do this like this too. If you want, you could just use a round brush and just go like this, like point, 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 point. You can kind of do that, but you just use the right opacity. And you can kind of just go like that. You can do the same thing with a round brush. That's me doing it with a round brush. It's just a little faster with that chalky brush, but you can still get the same effect. So don't worry if you don't have a brush exactly like that. You can do pretty much anything you need to with a round brush. It just might take a little bit longer or whatever. But you can definitely get it still. But this would be a little bit lighter. Like there'd be little sugar crystals like right where it's getting hit, and then it would fade off here and stuff like that. But what happens if you have a gumdrop like that, and then something in the middle is more dense, right? What happens if something is a little more dense in the middle, like it's like there's a seed on the inside or something, right? Well, what's going to happen there? And then we're going to paint something else next after this. And I'll show you. But this will introduce you to like the idea of what I'm saying. Check this out. So let's say there's a seed in there. Well, that seed is not going to be translucent, right? So the seed itself is not translucent. It's just that just the stuff that's around it that's translucent. So the seed itself is going to have a highlight and a light and a dark and a transition that's happening. Even though it's inside there, it's going to have that transition happening. Right now, maybe the light reflecting off that front edge is going to bounce out and sort of cancel out that lighter side of that seed that's in there. But depending on how clear this is, you might even have like a really pronounced silhouette for that too. Like you might have a really pronounced silhouette for that, and it will probably, in this particular scenario, would probably fade into there a little bit more gradually. But you can see what I mean. Like this would that area would not allow any light through, so it's just going to be darker, right? It's going to be a little bit darker because the light that's hitting it is going to be weaker, like that. So this is going to be like a seed, or this could be, like if this was like an egg, right? Like it's like a weird gummy egg, like frog egg or something, right? We've got like veins on this, like coming out, like it's like an embryo frog embryo or something. You know what I mean? That's gummy. And but then remember, if there's sugar on the whole thing too, light would be bouncing around, and sugar would also be hitting on the reflected light side. So this, let's do the environment again. Let's take our environment, this gray for the for the that we've got for the background. Let's apply that to this as well. Right now we're getting this like super textural effect, and it's like the environment is getting hit by that. So you can see how realistic you can get very easily with something like this with translucent stuff. Very, very fast. You can do it like if you understand the principles, it's not going to be that hard to get that to work, right? Let's go a little bit more, like a little bit less of that. Depending on how strong this reflected light would be, you might see a little bit less of the sugar or more or whatever. But yeah, we can. Let me grab this too and add a little bit more here, like this. Then I want to look at what you guys are doing. I want to see what you guys are doing before we move on to the next thing, which will be similar to what I'm doing here. I want to see. Okay. Now, Meg, you had some stuff up in there too. Like, I don't know if you want to bring it back. I can help you with it, but if you want to bring it back, you can. But nice, Andy. That's awesome. That's awesome. So the way you would adjust this, like you would have, so if you had light coming from above, if you had light coming from above here, like it would be this side. Remember, this side would probably be darker. So underneath here, like this edge would be dark. It's counterintuitive. I'm just going to paint over it, and I'll show you. I'll paint over this real quick. And whoops, hold on a second. What did I just do? I just messed up something. Sorry. One sec. Why is it not letting me? There we go. Okay. Let me do a layer up here. Sorry. I want to make sure I'm over top of what you've got. So I'll go here. One sec. Oh yeah, Anya said I could do this and assign layer to arrange layers. Bring to front. Is that it? Bring to front. Yes. Okay, sweet. Okay, got it. All right. Anya for the win. I'd never used that and didn't know that was there. So that's awesome. Okay, here. So let me draw over top of what you've got here, and I'll show you. And so you can save what you've got here, but this would be darker like this. So this would be darker. So I love this like really saturated red that you have here. I would kind of flip these. So like this would be like the warmer sort of, saturated side on that side. This side would be a little bit darker. I love that eye too. Like that eye, like this is awesome. And so that would be like this. This would be a little bit lighter, a little bit heavily saturated. Probably would come through a little bit more like this. And I would gradually kind of shift that like this. And then you'd have like the sugar or whatever on top of that. So you'd have this up here like this, like where towards the light source, like that. Does that make sense? So this would be here, and it depends on your scenario, like what you want to, what you would want to do. But then remember, light will catch, and if the light is strong, like really strong, you'll get some pretty strong stuff showing up over here. Like it'll be a little bit warmer, like I said, like a little bit more towards like the reddish side, and it can be really strong. It can be really strong like that. Now, if I use that chalky 3 brush, and I come here, and I come over here, and I do this, and I use like maybe 40% opacity, I can get this to look like a gummy kind of a thing, right? And then just choose where those highlights are, like have a little bit of that sugar getting hit right there. This this right here, you'd have what's behind it. So what's behind that that eye would be the value of if it's clear, right? If that's sort of clear, which it looks like, maybe you were doing it like a more milky version, which I kind of like. So even so, it would be a darker, like a milkier version like this. And then what you would have is the highlight on top of here, like this, like hitting right there on that darker side. And then you'd have like, I'm going lower opacity for that part, like, but then you'd have a little bit getting hit down here too, a little bit as it's passing through, like it would catch like that, right? So yeah, then this could have, then you could have if that's standing off the surface, you'd have a cast shadow from that, right? So you'd have a little bit of a darker area here to have a cast shadow like this, like point, 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 like that, like maybe coming down, not quite as strong as that, but yeah, so it's cool. Like it's really interesting to be able to like when you can start thinking that way to do that. So I'll show you the difference. Like it's actually flipped, which was what makes it difficult. Yours still works. It just looks like the light source is coming from a different direction. But what you did, so this part here is like flipped, but actually this eye is not. Like this eye has the darker part up here and has this highlight and has this. So this actually works really well. The only thing if you wanted to keep it like that, it's kind of cool actually because it looks like murky and like inset. Like it looks like when gummies go on like you know they go on go on the production line or whatever, and then they end up being a little more murky. Like it's not quite clear. It's supposed to be clear, but it's not. It looks kind of like that, like the gummy Coke bottles or whatever, and like the clear part is not quite clear. But that you could even just do that if you wanted to. It looks really cool though. I like that. It's working out well. These are working well too. Just keep those principles. Oh yeah, it's been in the cupboard too long. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Okay, so nice. Oh, there's Megs. There's Megs. That's great. Good job, Meg. Really, really good. That's working well. I would say if Meg's still here, is she still here? Yeah, she's here. I would go a little bit stronger and brighter on this side. So I would come over here a little bit stronger, brighter, like light would be catching on there, a little bit more on this side. And then these highlights right here, like you can go pretty bold with those, like the edges of them especially, and then kind of taper it off like this. You can kind of have it kind of taper off like that a little bit more, but you can go pretty bold with that. And then depending on what's around it, if there's darker something behind it or around it, you can actually go darker in the middle too. Like let's say there would be like a purple one behind it. We can kind of like do that. We can kind of like use low opacity to drop that in like this, like where you'd have that. Like that's all doable too. And if you had a purple gummy like that was behind that, it would make sense, right? Like you'd have this like right here or something like behind it, and it would make sense that that was coming through. So that looks great though. That looks really good. Just remember that like a lot of times those highlights, like this kind of a highlight there'll be like a section of this that's a little bit brighter than the rest if you want it to stand out, and you can kind of vary those. But you did such a good job. That looks really, really good. Everybody's doing good. Yeah, nice. This is hard. This is not easy. This is like very, very difficult for sure. But let me do one more thing before I head out. I want us to cover one more thing in terms of translucency. Here, let me get rid of my work over the top of Meg's, and I'll get rid of these. I want to show you these. These are really cool. And this is kind of what you were already painting, Andy. Like you were already kind of painting it. Um, it's I'll leave this up if anybody wants to see that, but it's this penguin egg. So this penguin egg, so this is a hard boiled penguin egg. Crazy, right? Like really crazy. Like it's one of those things that like you never see. Like you never see like a hard boiled penguin egg, like but apparently it was like a big deal. Apparently it was a very big deal. Like people to the point where like they had to like tell people to stop, I think, because people were like because I don't think penguins like they don't lay that many eggs, right? And so I don't know if it was like a puffin or whatever, but apparently explorers that would go out there, yeah, it's weird, right? Explorers that would go out there would find these eggs, and it was like a mix between eggs and fish. Like it would taste like fish and eggs like mixed, and they liked it. For me, that doesn't sound great. But apparently they loved it. But what I wanted to show you guys this for was not to advocate for eating penguin eggs, of course, but but to actually just to see something that is like semi-translucent, but then the inside, like that yolk part, which is like a bright orange. It's actually like a bright orange on the inside, like rust colored almost. Like it's crazy how bright it is. And like those are like the inside is really opaque, right? But this is translucent, and you can see that break between there. But you can also see this environment around it. I want you to notice this. Remember, I was talking about that Fresnel effect, the perfume of artists, the Fresnel effect. But look, where do you see the reflection of the plate? Oblique angle on the sides, right? Where do you see the reflection of the plate in here? No, right? It's missing from here, right? Missing from there. You see the highlight from the light, but not like this plate and all this stuff. Like it starts to fade out as it comes up here, right? Really interesting. Really interesting. So let's make some of these. Let's make some of these penguin eggs. Let's make some and try to get that yolk being like opaque inside there, and it's going to have a light and a dark. You see how the yolk has? It's like a regular sphere. It's got a light and a dark there. And again, don't obsess about the exact colors and the exact like. Don't worry about that. Think about more of what's happening with the light, and be concerned with that effect. That's the main thing. So I'm just going to start here. I'm going to I'm going to actually paint on this as well. I'm going to do another layer, and I'm going to do the yolk on the inside. So I'm going to start like normally the yolks would be like this. No joke. They're like really bright like this. But I'm going to actually, kind of shift it more towards the yellows because that's what's happening on the inside here. I'm going to sort of start right here and then get a little more, like this. But this is a good starting point for me, at least, like these kind of colors. It'll be a little more dull in the highlight, I think. And yeah, it'll be it's a little more saturated, maybe just a bit darker. I gotta find that sweet spot. This kind of a thing, like this. And then I'm going to start indicating some of the other things that are going on, but it definitely should be darker on the inside. Like definitely. It just makes sense to me to go over top, like to get this working first, and then to go over top of this with the other environmental factors that are there. You guys can paint along with me too if you want. If you want to try this, you can paint along with me and kind of use what I'm doing as like a playbook. No environmental reflections yet. Don't need to worry about that. Not overly worried about that. I just want to get like the overall feel of this. This also would get more saturated, more warm as it goes towards the edge. I want to get that. I do want to get that in down here. I'm going to go softer. It would be a little bit darker, but I'll go 20% opacity and drop that in like this. That's going to happen like a little bit more like that. This would be darker facing that light source, right? A little bit more like this. And then I'm going to go back to that yolk. This. We'll go back to this yolk. Part will be maybe just a little bit later, but then the fall off happens really quickly. Really quickly. So I want to try to get, I'm going to use like a rough brush to try to get like a rough effect for this. I'll use low opacity, but like this doesn't look like it looks kind of like a meatball kind of. It doesn't look like a like a super smooth yolk or something like that. It looks a little bit more like a meatball kind of a thing. It's darker too, a little bit warmer, but a little bit more like this. And then what I'm going to do is now I'm going to create those other layers, right? So watch, I'm going to create the highlight layer. So I'm going to come over with like a soft brush like this, or actually I can just come over with this brush at like 10% opacity. Create this highlight layer. This is a new layer I'm putting on top. That's facing like where I'm going to have the light source coming from the top right. It's like this. And then, and actually I can I can put that in, but I want to do like the environment as well, right? So I want to have like this gray for the environment, going, hitting the sides as well. Again, that Fresnel effect like this. And you know what I'm going to do? Like, so yours down there, Andy, your gummy stuff is right there, right? So I'm going to put it like a reflection of that gummy stuff in here. Like I'm going to shift it a little bit more towards the warms, which is what it would look like. But let's just I'm going to do that on a separate layer so I can adjust the opacity. But let's just say I've got that, that gummy that's showing up in there, right? Might be a little more red than that, but it'll like show up in there like this. I'll put this in, but I'll kind of and I'm going to color pick from some of the stuff you have there. Drop that in and do that. And then what I'm going to do is drop the opacity of that layer. And then actually I'm going to put this layer over top of that, right? So it's got that showing up there. Let's go here as well. Like a little bit more. I'd have like probably a little bit more of the features on there. Probably I would This was a little bit darker. This, like this. Working this down. So at least like some of the environment is thrown in there, right? At least some of that is thrown in there, and you can see it there. But again, I would see that, but it would start to fade as it comes back here. So as it starts to head towards the center, I'm actually just going to erase that that as it comes towards the center. Like I'm just going to leave it on that edge because of that Fresnel effect. Like that kind of thing, right? So there's that. Now we're getting a little bit of the environment involved. I want to go up to another layer, put the highlight in, like the strong highlight that I see like on those up there. Like this. Am I on eraser? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so let's come in. Like it actually is. There's a little bit of a darker part to the highlight, like a little bit of a darker part. Like it's kind of. It looks sort of like this, and then there's it must be the window or the light or whatever it's near. Like there's like a darker part of the highlight, and then there's like a stronger part of the highlight as well. But then you definitely have stuff around it too, like that kind of a thing happening around it. Let me kind of get that highlight working up like this. Again, doing all this on separate layers helps a lot. Fun. So you come in like that. I'm gonna go a little bit softer and just go like 10% opacity and just spread out some of these highlights just a bit. So the surface looks like that. Now we also would have, I think I'd have a bit, there'd be a bit covering this. That yolk wouldn't be quite as clear. It should be a bit more murky. And so I think what I'll do for that is actually in this uh in this layer too. I'm going to go like 10% opacity. I'm just going to grab some of these darker, more murkier value or colors and values and come over this here. Let me do a layer above this. Yeah, let me drop this down. I'll go like 20% opacity, darken this down. Hold on. There we go, 10%. I'm gonna make this whole thing like it needs to be like a little more murky, right? Like it's a little less translucent, right? But I'm still gonna go darker towards the light source and then lighter as it goes towards the edge here. And at the very edge, I can even have like I see this on the reference. It goes a little bit more like even like orange. It must be reflecting something that's showing that. But you see now that murkiness has helped a lot, right? It's like a darker kind of green sort of murky area like that. It's helping quite a bit to make that look like it's more opaque. A little bit more in there, just a bit more. And then let's go back to this. Right, kind of come in like that. So, and I want to go back to I want to add a little bit more texture to the yolk, make it look a bit more, it's looking a little generic right now. So I'll come back to this and come back in and say like, all right, let me go a little bit warmer like this. Just add like breakup patterns to it. And now this is on the layer underneath, right? So I can adjust all this, which is glorious, right? I can just come in and adjust all this. I don't have to like, it's got its own core shadow, its own, area there. I don't have to worry too much about it. If I feel like oops, let me move this. Where did I move that to? I moved it up too high, I think. Hold on. Is it under here? Yeah, that's where it is. Maybe under there. Oh no, there we go. There's where it belongs. Okay. Go back and go back with some of these strokes. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay. And then I will kind of make this a little bit darker over top of this, like this. And I'm gonna actually just some like that. That's a pretty harsh edge to this highlight up here. That layer, like there's a pretty harsh. I want to do that same Fresnel effect and kind of get rid of this stuff in the center here and let that kind of sit in there. It does help make it look a bit more murky, but that will help. I think also one thing that will help this as well is just having a little bit of a drop shadow underneath. A little bit of a drop shadow would actually help quite a bit. Like if this was sitting, that's like if this was, sitting off the ground like that, it's going to give it some context. Actually, I'll just do an ellipse like that for the ground. Do this. And there would be like maybe a little bit of refraction, like a tiny bit of refraction, like down here. Like it would be a little bit like that. Like you'd have a little bit of it coming through, just a touch. But we could do something like this. And then maybe the environment is actually bouncing into this as well, right? So bouncing into this, like the environment is hitting this shadow as well. This kind of a thing, but darker. Like, but that kind of gives it some context of like where the light's coming from and stuff like that. It's not exactly right, actually. The shadow isn't, but move it a little bit this way. Here, I'll move it this way. That's a little bit better. And then this would actually be a little bit softer too. This edge would, like, as it gets further away from the object that's casting it, it would be a little bit softer, a little bit more like that. So that's good. But then see, we're starting to get close to it. Now, the only other thing that's happening too is like there are, hey Hadley, what's up? There are thicker areas that are showing up on this, or like there's reflections that are showing up, like other kinds of reflections and thicker areas of the egg that are showing up. So I'll show you. If I want to put those in, I could. And let me actually oh, we're doing translucent objects, Hadley. Doing translucent objects. And we're finishing up here soon, but we're doing translucent ones. So we've talked through a lot of that. And so this is actually a penguin egg that has been that's been hard boiled, which is weird. Kind of a weird reference, I know, but it's yeah, no problem, no problem. It's been hard boiled, and so it's odd, but it's helpful to be able to see, to see like this effect, right, of that translucency. And I want to there's like the thicker area for like the bottom of the egg, like right here is what I was talking about. So like if you look right here, like this is like the bottom of the egg right here. Hold on a second. Like right there. Like you can kind of see like that's where like the base of the shell is maybe or something, or maybe there's a reflection on there or something like that. So I want to get a little bit, I'm going to adjust these highlights just a bit to get the edges to be a little bit softer. And then I want to put in maybe some of those reflections in there. So some of it's the environment around there. So I'm going to grab this gray. This is the plate obviously on the original, but we can assume there's like a gray environment around there. We've got a gray background that would hit like that. We could also put it in down here too, right? So like this could be hitting like down here and be cutting across, like, those kinds of things could be reflecting. Like I said, this one is reflecting into here, like this, that gummy is reflecting into here. We can even have like a little bit of that gummy over there reflecting into that. All that's going to help it like kind of settle into the environment a bit more. This may come across here and kind of reflect like that. Like this would be the kind of thing that you're seeing up there. Like it depends, right? It depends on the situation. And you can see like right here, it's a little bit smoother on that one spot. So it gets a little bit darker. So you could actually even like come in here and make that little section a bit darker. And then that reflection is like that, just like it is on the bottom of that egg. You could do something like that too, if you wanted to. Um, but yeah, this is where you have a lot of opportunity for like the environment and incorporating that environment into what you've got here. Let's put some tendrils coming off this too, right? Let's put some like some, so it's a let's make it like alien-ish, right? So like a penguin egg, we can turn it into something that is a little bit more concept arty, right? Let's add some like veiny stuff on it, like it's kind of fun too. But I want to throw in a little bit of those reflections. I threw in a little bit. Let me throw in a bit more. I kind of like this one up here that has like that. You can even do that as a selection. Watch. I'll do it as a selection. Like you kind of do this, make a selection on the edge of it. And if it's a reflection, you can do this, like fill it in with the value. Right here, like this. And then just reduce that in opacity if you want, like that kind of thing. And then you can erase out what you want there to get the shape to be whatever, and it actually helps a lot, like to to do that. And then you can select that layer too, or even just choose that layer and maybe darken it. Like maybe the edge of this gets a little bit darker. I can do that. Just darken like the edge of that or something, or lighten the top of that. Like maybe even make the background reflecting in this a bit more, like this, like on that one side or whatever. That helps a lot. Yeah, let's put some veiny stuff on this or whatever, like little tendrils coming off this guy. And then I want to see what you guys are up to. Like this kind of thing. And again, see, these would be a little bit more. The reason these would show up on the inside of here is because these are more opaque, right? They're not going to let that translucent, it's not translucent, so it's not going to let that light through, right? So you're going to have a real a difference in the way they're behaving. There we go. Yes. What if there was like so what if it's like a penguin embryo or something, right? Where it's like attached, like this is the, let's do something like this, right? Let's do, whoops. Do like it's attached to something down here. I'll show you what I mean. Like what if there's something in there like this? Like this is attached to it, right? Like going in the surface of it. Here, I'll show you what I mean. Like this. And this is got some density. So this one would be light, slightly translucent too. I'll have this. This would be like the same sort of thing. This object that's inside there, right, would be slightly translucent too. So maybe it's catching a bit of light on the object itself. But we're just doing the same thing, but we're doing it on the inside of this, right? So that's actually coming through like this. I'll show you. I mean, something attached to it in there. Let's make it fleshy colored so that it, like that kind of thing. And you can do whatever you want. Like that's the whole thing. Once you understand the concepts and once you understand what, how to approach it, you can approach it in whatever way you want at that point, which is awesome, right? That's the cool part. Is like you're not tied down to anything. Like you can actually, come in and say, all right, I want to have this weird object that's semi see-through and translucent and then you can adjust all that. You can do it. And once you get the principles, then then all of a sudden anything like blood or anything or like gemstones or whatever, like they all become easier because you understand how to do like the basic kind of texture, right? You get it, you understand it. So it's amazing. Like you can actually use this for a lot more than you'd think. Of course, it's not just candy and penguin eggs. That kind of thing. There's a lot more that you can use it for, of course. So let's get like maybe some of this like attaching in there or something. I don't know. That's weird. Let's make it like some parts of that see through. Parts of that are see like I don't know. It just looks like the embryos starting, like this weird alien embryos starting there or something. Maybe I need to make like a really clear connection. Maybe like there needs to be a really clear connection to that, like that or something. That's a little better, I guess. But actually, I'll lock the opacity of this so we can darken this down like this. There we go. A little bit better, right? And then we can have this reflecting some light. There you go. It's weird. But fun, right? Weird but fun. So yeah, so this is so when it comes to, yeah, it's, oh, thanks, Danny. It's fun. Yeah, so when it comes to translucency and those types of things like transparency, translucency, like yeah, try to think this way. You know what I mean? Like try to think this way and try to put those principles in mind. And again, look, if all else fails, like if all else fails, like to see this is so cool, Andy. Like that's really cool, man. Really good job. Like that. I love this. Let me grab my brush. Can I actually draw? Oh, I've got to take off this. Sorry. That looks awesome. Like that's great. That looks so good, you know? That looks really good. And if you had something behind this too, like if you have something behind this, like let's say like a pole is going through there, you can simulate that too. Like again, remember it distorts. So you could have like that distortion of that object behind there, whatever. Like there's lots of options for what you can do. Same thing here too, right? If this is cutting back through here, like if we have this like whoosh, like this cuts through, you can, it's going to distort a little bit. Again, that gets a little complex, like where it's going to show up. That gets a little complex, but you can kind of show that distortion there, like happening behind it, and like obviously, you'd want to go over that a bit and have it be it looks like it'd be a bit more murky, but you can get some really cool effects, or even just make it bigger. Like maybe the whole thing would be bigger. I'll erase some of this after I do it, but like this whole thing would be bigger, maybe right there. You might see it like that, and then you just erase these parts at like 100%. You erase like these parts, right? That are like where that's cutting through like this, right? Like showing through the back like that. You know what I'm saying? Like that, if you start to think that way and start to think about what the light is doing, you can get some really, really cool effects. So you guys are doing good. You guys are doing really good. But again, like I said, worst case scenario, like when you're dealing with like translucency, think of those like gummy snacks because it will be like this is the way to think about it is like if you have this, then the darker part is going to be facing the light like this. Darker part's facing the light. This part's going to get warmer and more saturated on this side. And then the highlight's going to be on the dark side, which is actually facing the light, which is really weird, right? But then light's going to bounce off this surface as well. Like light's going to bounce off that surface as well, but it's also going to pass through. So when it passes through, it's going to do this sort of a thing, right? So that's the way to, and then also light's going to catch on this edge where the light is passing through the object. Light's going to probably catch on this edge and be concentrated like from refraction, right? Refraction and just the way it's bouncing, like you'll see, like that's the main thing to think about, right? That's the main thing. Like if nothing else, like think of that. And then remember, like I said, the more translucent it is, the less pronounced that effect's going to be. Like the more like you will have like a darkening effect around the outside, especially. But if there's something in the middle, like a seed or whatever, and it's way more opaque, not translucent, you're going to have that kind of a thing happening, right? But then remember, light is still hitting on the surface, so light will be going over top of that. Does that make sense? So if this was a little alien amoeba, or not amoeba, like a fetus or something, you know what I mean, or egg or something, right? You're going to have something like that happening, right? Um, and so if you can keep that in mind, like that simple principle, like you have the thing itself, then when you get the environment involved too, and you say like, and you get that Fresnel effect, like this is bouncing around the outside, then it gets really realistic like that. Like this gray that's here, or even the green that's on this egg, like that. That's going to be way more pronounced as well. Just depends like what level of realism you want to go to, like that kind of a thing. This one's got yellow on this side. Let's put yellow on this side a little bit. From the environment, a little bit of orange at the bottom, like that, that kind of thing. It's going to make it look, and then the environment's going to be hitting it too. Make it look much more real. So, anyways, have fun with this, you guys. So that's all I've got for today. But I wanted to cover that, and you can see, like, I like doing these textures because it's applicable to a lot of different areas, and just helps you kind of think through how light works. That's the main thing. Like you see, like the more you get into this, the more you get into everything, like the more it's all about the light. It's about what the light is doing, how it's bouncing. And I struggled because there's a lot to talk about with this. I'm trying to condense it down and like give you what would be helpful. Good. I'm glad it was interesting, Andy. Good. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, it's there's a lot to say, and it can be like a little bit like, yeah, it's a little bit tricky to like kind of condense it. But yeah, there's a lot just because you're talking about how light behaves and everything, and it's just really tricky. But I think you guys did good. These all look awesome. They look really, really good. Really, really good job. And just keep studying those things. Like find cool references, like hard boiled hard-boiled penguin eggs and stuff, which is so weird. But like, you know, find stuff like that that you can practice this with, and then make a character out of it, make a creature out of it, make something different out of it. You know what I mean? Like try to experiment. Like this is awesome. This is like a macabre, like I can see this on like Trent Reznor of like Nine Inch Nails, like that's on his wall, right? That's like he's got like this like picture on it, or I mean a sculpture thing on his wall that looks like this, right? I can totally see that. You know, I love that. So it's fun. So yeah, give it a shot. You guys can stay, experiment, have some fun with it. I didn't get to talk about, I have to go, but I didn't get to talk, but this same principle relates to subsurface scattering. Same thing. So try that out. Try that out with some skin and look at subsurface scattering. It's the same principle, same thing. So give it a shot. But good job, guys. Take it easy. You guys did really good, and I will catch you next time. We'll keep learning all this stuff. We'll keep pushing all these fundamentals and and have fun with it. Oh yeah, no problem, Hadley. Yeah. All right, take it easy, guys. Thanks.